Why don't you come closer? Yes, come on, look at me. You don't recognize me? That doesn't surprise me at all. I can hardly recognize myself. But then for 18 years you called me the woman who cannot see the stars. Yes, that's me. I know exactly what you are thinking. You don't believe a word I say, do you? Then simply listen. I'll tell you my story. It was last week on the Sabbath in the synagogue. Rabbi Jesus was there teaching. Of course I went along. Nobody could have stopped me. I've heard it said he has nothing against women. He isn't like our local rabbi. I always get the feeling that I'm not welcome. Of course that hurts. I know exactly that I'm not a pleasant sight. There was a time in my life when I did ask, why? Why me? Why me, God? Why do I have to run like a cripple? Why? But I no longer ask the question why. It's futile. It's not my fault the way that I look. I am as I am, period. And if our leader of the synagogue has a problem with this, I can't help it. You're completely right when you call me the woman who cannot see the stars. Only sand and feet, feet of children, feet of women, feet. Sometimes the feet stop and I feel the piercing look in my back. And that feels like flaming arrows. But I've got used to it, to people's gossip, to playing children suddenly becoming silent, to the moroseness of some men. Get out of the way. The other day somebody shouted, "Be off! Your handicap makes me sick." And another man hissed, "Your sight is an insult to my eyes." No, I can't see much, but I can hear everything. Sometimes more than I would like to. The other day, some children called after me, "Look at that crippled woman, look at the crippled woman." And then they laughed, such a snooty laughter. That's why I don't like to leave my house much and walk around. Yes, I know, you can't call it walking. The children are right. I shuffle along. But I've learned to shuffle quickly. Friends? I haven't got any. No, I don't say that for you to pity me. I'm saying that because I truly believe I could really give a lot to others. For example, listening. Yes, I'm a good listener. And who wouldn't like to have a friend who simply listens and who doesn't immediately give unwanted advice? But unfortunately, nobody knows that I'm a good listener. I don't really like being a woman. We belong to the so-called weaker sex, and sometimes I have the feeling that our weakness is being exploited by the men. There seems to be a system behind all these laws. Take me, for example. I have no husband. That's why I'm not worth anything. Without a husband, you are nothing. A nobody. Before I was married, I was under the thumb of my father. Yes, he was really happy when he could delegate his responsibility to my husband. And from then on, I was under the thumb of my husband. Looking back, I was a good daughter, a good wife. I did everything my husband demanded and expected of me. I was never rebellious. Most of the time I was at home anyway, pottering around. Whenever I left the house, I wore a veil. My father is no longer alive, neither is my husband. There are no male relatives around. I am so to speak, alone. When my neighbor leaves her house, she's always accompanied by a male person. No, not to protect her. Her husband's name has to be protected, for she might just get into an inappropriate situation. So, as a matter of fact, people don't like me leaving the house now that I'm on my own. And it does make me feel rather uncomfortable anyway. I only leave the house whenever it's absolutely necessary. And to the synagogue. That's where I'm also going. I do it because I want to, even though I know that I'm not particularly welcome there either. When I was a child, I overheard my mother being talked to by a man outside our house, a stranger. And my father saw it. Oh, was he furious! He yelled at her, asking her what had come over her to be talking to a stranger in the street without him being around. As far as I recall, my mother never did that again. It simply isn't appropriate for a respectable woman. My mother never offered any resistance towards my father, and neither did I. I belonged to my husband. To say I was the possession of my husband is equally true. He owned me completely. He, and he alone, and nobody else, was allowed to touch me. You're wondering why? Well, just think about it. It's got something to do with honor. If another man were to touch me, that would take away honor from my husband. Yes, it would be a disgrace, a dishonor. But there isn't anybody who wants to touch me. I, the crippled woman who cannot see the stars. There isn't anybody who wants to talk to me. I, the crippled woman who cannot see the stars. There isn't anybody who wants to listen to me. I, the crippled woman who cannot see the stars. But I am a good listener. At least I try to in the synagogue. But that's not easy. We women sit at the back of the synagogue, which is mostly crowded and separated by a curtain from the men. You can hardly see anything. And you can hardly understand anything either, only this constant mumbling which comes from the area where the men are. And I must add that I'm getting hard of hearing. That's so frustrating. Because, I would love to learn more about the God of our father, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But the men don't allow that. They exclude us, just like that. So isn't it understandable that we women start talking about other stuff, like family and such? We exchange recipes. And yes, I have to admit it, we gossip. Don't blame us. Whatever can we do? We don't understand anything either. I have no idea who ever thought about putting us behind that curtain. This is the way it's been done as long as I can remember. And the leader of the synagogue keeps an eye on it, that everything functions properly. He is responsible for that. I've heard it said that men are not supposed to pray in the presence of women. It supposedly distracts them. And they would start thinking about carnal things, lustful thoughts. Well, I don't think any man would feel distracted by me. I mean, really. Sometimes I wonder what kind of problems they have. They put us behind this curtain because they feel they cannot control their lustful thoughts. Come off it. But why get aggravated? Women can't do anything. But these rules and regulations do get on my nerves. For example, we are not supposed to cut our hair. No, we have to let it grow. But we are not supposed to show it in public. Oh no, the hair has to be covered. Otherwise, men might possibly get them again, these lustful thoughts. I have heard that in our prayer book there is an ancient Jewish prayer for men. I'm not quite sure if I can recall it correctly, but it goes something like this. Thanks be to God that I'm not a pagan. Thanks be to God that I'm not created as a slave. And thanks be to God that He has not created me a woman. Amazing, isn't it? But who is interested in what I think about it? Perhaps that's the reason why I love to sleep so much and so long, because my dream was so much nicer than reality. For 18 years, I couldn't see the sun and the stars. My back was totally crooked, bent down. I couldn't stand up straight. My world consisted only of ground and of feet. Sometimes in my dream I saw them very vividly in front of me. The sun, the moon, the stars, and the blue sky, and the white clouds chasing each other. And in my dream I could even feel the sun rays caressing my face. And sometimes in my dream somebody smiled at me. And that was so wonderful. Yes, I know. My neighbors have speculated why I'm crippled. Some say I had osteoporosis. Others say I had arthritis. Again, others whispered and say my husband abused me first emotionally and then physically. Or that I had an unclean spirit. Or that it was simply my own fault. God had punished me. The fact that I was crippled was proof of my guilt and distance from God. Whatever the cause may have been, it's been a chronic illness. I don't know why I'm crippled. So why speculate about it? It's nobody's business, and nobody wants to help me anyway. And pity doesn't help me either. That I've learned during my 18 years of isolation. You don't have any idea what it's like to live among people and always have the feeling you just don't belong. And this shame, this wretched shame. Yes, I am ashamed. Of course I would like to be like other women and carry my head up high. But I am like a leper, and people officially regard me as such. I am ritually unclean. That's the official term. People like me are not allowed officially to enter the synagogue on the Sabbath and worship God. You didn't know that, did you? But nevertheless, I did go into the synagogue on the Sabbath. I had heard about Rabbi Jesus, and when he came to our synagogue, well, nobody could have stopped me, not even our leader of the synagogue, whether he likes it or not. So I shuffled into the synagogue and wanted to get to the women's area as quickly as possible without causing too much disturbance. It seemed to be really crowded. I hope my neighbor has kept a seat for me, I thought, because, of course, I cannot stand that long. Rabbi Jesus had already started teaching. That must be him, I thought. I didn't know his voice. There was something warm and pleasant about it. So I tried to pass him as quietly as possible. But I didn't manage. Oh, that was so embarrassing. And I was so glad to finally reach my seat and sit down. Suddenly, Rabbi Jesus stopped talking. And do you know what happened next? With a firm voice, he said, "Woman, come to the front." There was utter silence in the synagogue. Nobody dared to move. So my neighbor gave me a push into my side and whispered, "I think he's talking about you." Oh, yes, of course, he's talking about me. How ridiculous is that? She must have lost her mind. Me walking into the men's area, that's unheard of. Rabbi Jesus obviously doesn't know the rules of our synagogue. And besides, I'm glad I'm sitting. But my neighbor insisted, and she sounded really excited. I really think he means you. I was shocked, but there seemed to be no doubt. Jesus really meant me. Waves of fear gripped me. Hot and cold shivers ran down my back. I wasn't even allowed to be in the synagogue on the Sabbath. I, the unclean woman. Rabbi Jesus would probably throw me out in front of everybody. But I had heard so many good things about him. What did he want from me in front of everybody? Oh, fear raged within me. Do I remain sitting? Do I go forward? Do I remain sitting? Do I go forward? I have no idea where my courage came from, but I really got out of my seat and shuffled into the men's area. Oh, that was so embarrassing. Even though I couldn't see, I felt their eyes penetrating my back. It felt like a million flaming darts. Then I saw his sandals. Yes, that must be him. My heart beat in my throat. I trembled like aspen leaf. And then I heard his voice right in front of me. Woman, you are freed from your infirmity. Woman.